talking today with this guy who I've never met face to face called Jeffrey Morris.
That's me.
And I've been obsessed with you because I'm going to tell you why. You know, there's people you see and they're just full of piss and vinegar. You know, they're all talking big and blah, blah, blah. And they disappear after 6 months or a year and, you know, big talk about this and that. Then I just keep seeing you. I thought, what is this guy doing? He's like connected to all these big people. He's doing great work. He's talking a big game, but he seems to be delivering. And it wasn't just for a year or 2 years. It's been going on for many years. And I start thinking, man, this guy's really on something. Mm-hmm. You know, and just to introduce myself, I'm a film director I've been a director since I was 21, full-time, nothing else. Mm-hmm. And all I'm interested in is science fiction. And as a boy, I was building spaceships and models and full-size spaceships. Mm-hmm. And that's still continued to this day. And everything I do reflects that. So for me to see somebody else in the world who actually maybe is into the same things, mm-hmm. You know, and I just thought, man, this guy's onto something. Mm. And then I see you're doing this documentary on the Eagle, which was one of my, you know, my top 5 favorite spaceships of all time.
Can we stop you there? I got to hear the other 4.
Oh, dude. Okay.
I got to hear the 4.
Okay. Well, there's obviously the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is a derivative of the Eagle.
Which it is. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Flying Sub.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that thing's a work of art inside and out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why the bright yellow just hits me. Mm-hmm. Obviously the loss. You've got it behind you, so I'm kind of embarrassed. But you know, the Jupiter 2.
Okay. Yeah. That was my very first spaceship love, was the Jupiter 2. You know, it's when I was a kid, seeing that in Lost in Space, I thought it was so cool that there was to see good guys with a flying saucer, right? It's not just alien, right? It's the humans with the flying saucer. I think that was really cool. Yeah.
And they landed back in the 1950s or 40s, I think it was, on Earth at one point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Blew my mind. What else? How many are we up to? See the space pod actually. I think they go together, so I'd call that as one. You know,
I got one of those.
I see that
right here. Yeah. I love that thing. It's super. It's another sort of lunar module delivered, sort of derivative, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
And the other one is the Blockade Runner for me.
Oh, cool! That's a cool ship.
But again,
Eagle inspired, right? Yeah. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just think
no.
To hear your, so
I love talking about these things.
Yeah.
What was your what are your top favorites?
My favorites, the Eagle, obviously. I'm very fond of the refit Enterprise from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I think that you talk about work of art. I think that ship is a work of art. I think it's a very, very beautiful design. I like it a lot. Gosh, those are 2. The Jupiter 2 is a favorite. You know, one that I really like a lot. I mean, I start getting into fighters and things. I love this Thunder Fighter from Buck Rogers. Mm-hmm. That's a really cool design. Viper. This is one. Do you remember this anime? Gatchaman from the Japanese animated, they became Battle of the Planets.
Battle of the Planets. Yeah,
exactly. I love that design. It's just one that is just such a cool, you know. So these are smaller ships and everything. I mean, obviously, when looking at Star Wars, I obviously have a real love for the Falcon. I actually dig snow speeders a lot. You know, I really like the sort of the practicality of the snow speeder and everything, and the you know, it's not really a spaceship, but it's a really cool Star Wars vehicle. You know, it's probably my favorite Star Wars design in a lot of ways. So it's just cool. And I was just looking at this new series, this Ahsoka, and they have this E-wing fighter in there, which is just blew my mind. I don't know if you saw that or not, but that's an incredible design. What a great!
You know where that came from was the Dark Empire comic series.
Yes, Heir to the Empire.
Yeah. No, was it Dark Empire or Heir to the Empire?
I think it's an Heir to the Empire. I think.
Got it.
yeah. But that's what a great design. I love that ship. That's super cool. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I
It,
mean, all
it
those kinds of
translated
things.
well, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It really did. It really did. It's awesome. So yeah. So, but I've always been into spaceships. It's my love of spaceships, though. I would have to say it started with the real stuff, right? Oh my gosh, I'm not. What am I thinking about? I'm missing 2001. I didn't think about 2001. There's a whole bevy of designs in 2001: A Space Odyssey that I think are fantastic. The Discovery and I mean, literally all of them. The space pods from the pods from 2001. What an
Yeah.
incredible design! Those look like a little, amazing little sculptural, that oval window in the front and all that. Just what a beautiful design. It's just great. I mean, that film redefined science fiction in a lot of ways. So yeah. So at 2001, I have to give kudos to that. I think that's probably the most progressive science fiction design of all time in a lot of ways. And I think it tremendously influenced every single thing that came after that, including Star Wars and obviously Space 1999 and all this stuff. If you didn't have 2001, we wouldn't have all those. I think.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So my big question is, you're working on a documentary about the Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of almost putting aside your movie projects for the moment, which is I get it, because I understand where you're aiming for.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was I'm guessing we're both maybe too young to have seen. Well, actually, no, I did see Space 1999 and UFO originally broadcast.
I did too. I was.
Okay.
Well, you see, I saw UFO. UFO was the very first science fiction show I can remember watching. I saw it with my father, and I must have been about 4 years old when my father would watch that show. And then when 1999 came on in syndication, I think I was about 7. It was
Right.
the fall of '75, so I was 7 years old. So So I saw it first run, and I was a small child, but I don't know. The seriousness of it and the maturity of it and everything, I was in. The first episode, I was just in. I thought it was so cool. I was like, okay, I'm growing up and I'm doing that. I'm going up there. I'm going to be on a moon base flying those ships and doing that. It felt like a direct connection to me to the NASA stuff that I was seeing at the time, if that makes sense. So yeah.
It was clever of them to, kind of rip NASA off in that way, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was. I think it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, right? I mean, I think honestly, the part of why I'm exploring this as a documentary is because I really believe it's that connection of those NASA elements that's caused it to endure this long. I really do. Yeah, I really do. Yeah.
It was very real world in the sense that you could believe they were real. I mean, going back to UFO for a little bit, another one of my obsessions.
It's my all-time favorite TV show is UFO.
Yeah, it's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a weird. It's so odd, but it's really good. There's some really good, dark, intense story. One I like a lot. Another. British series, The Prisoner. The Prisoner is fantastic, and it kind of felt almost like a sci-fi prisoner in a way. The Prisoner is kind of sci-fi anyway, but this is like a space-going sci-fi prisoner in a way. If they felt like there was DNA that they connected in a way.
Yeah. There was a vibe going on.
A vibe. That's the term. Yeah. I'm not saying narratively connected. I just mean in terms of the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was interesting too that Star Wars itself and Star Wars came out of the basically the same model team as Space 1999 and I guess UFO. But what about 2001? Was that
2000? So you've got some continuity between 2001, the team there, going forward into. I mean, you've got Derek Meddings and. Derek didn't work directly into 2001, I don't believe, but some of the members of the team, including Brian Johnson, who worked on 2001, they were part of that whole, Derek Meddings sort of group that was doing the Jerry Anderson stuff and everything. So, hey, you've seen Doppelganger, right? Yeah.
Or right? Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. Yeah.
Yes, or Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. Yes. Yep. So that's another one I saw when I was a kid that kind of blew my mind. It was very cool, and that's sort of a prototype for UFO in a way. Just as some of the same actors, and well, you had Ed Bishop and George Sewell, and some of those actors, and even the car that ends up being sort of the prototype for Straker's car is all in Doppelganger. It's pretty cool. So
yeah. 1980 wasn't exactly as they envisaged though, was it?
1980 was a lot. Well, okay. Here's what I find interesting though is if you think about how fast things were advancing in the 50s and 60s, if we had not sort of stalled politically and things had kind of, I'm not saying we would have been all the way to where it was in the 1980 depicted in UFO, but I don't think it would have felt crazy to have the thought of a small moon base being up there in 1980, or these super advanced submarines, or all these, right? I mean, it felt like there was a trajectory. And if that trajectory, the momentum had kept going that was happening from the 1960s, think about how fast from Kennedy saying we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, and they did it, right?
Yeah.
Well, what was to say if we kept those sort of quantum leaps continuing, right? There's nothing saying that we wouldn't have had something like some of the elements of a world of UFO in 1980. I think I can understand how someone might have thought that 1980 would be that cool in a way.
Yeah. And it should have been.
Oh, absolutely. Of course it should have been. It's as I said, it's for me, it's devastating. I'd give up all the smartphones and all the tech and all the stuff we've got right now to have these analog compute. If we had that spacefaring civilization that you saw in shows like UFO in Space 1999 and things like that, and we had those kind of advancements, but we were not as advanced as we are in terms of miniature electronics and stuff, I'd give it up in a second to have that world. I think it'd be better off for it. I think we'd have a much better world in a lot of ways. I really do.
Have you ever seen a show called For All Mankind?
I have. Yeah.
It kind of follows that trajectory of
yes. Yeah.
What if we had continued?
Right.
All based on the fact the Russians got there first, which
the Russians getting there first, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, what was the missing link? The real missing link in all this was the fact that we didn't have the political motivation anymore. It's like as far as the U.S. is concerned, we got to the moon, and I think the public's view was like, I think there was a percentage of the public already that was sort of like, why are we spending so much money on this? And then you had Vietnam happening at the same time and all that, right? So I think once we kind of beat the Russians, it was like, well, what are we doing this for? And I think if there had been more of an educational push, I remember being a kid at the time and just not feeling it in school. It was not something that I knew as much as I did about space and about science because I sought it out myself. It wasn't like it was something that was built into the core of what was in the curriculum, And I think if there'd been more in the curriculum to help kids and help people understand, like not just kids, but everyone, the whole culture, why is this important? And why do we want to keep going? I think we might have kept going, but we didn't. And it's a tragedy, and I think it's really hurt. I think it's hurt human civilization in a lot of ways. I really do. I never would have possibly imagined that 2023 would be what it's like. I just never would have imagined that in a million years.
Well, 2023, we're just starting to go back now.
Yes, just starting. Yeah, it's like if you said, "Hey, by the way, we're not going to be going back until just starting," as you said, starting to go back, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we aren't back. We're just thinking about it. We're working on it. We're not there yet, So.
Yeah. It's, and the thing that gets me, from what I've heard from the scientists, is that nothing's changed. It's still the same technology for what NASA's using to go back to the moon. It's the same concept. Meanwhile, we got Elon Musk, with a rocket ship that looks like it's from Fireball XL5 or something, or
right. Yeah.
that will actually land like it was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting. We got these two dichotomies going at the moment, with spaceflight, which I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit like, do you ever see a show called Salvage One?
Of course. Of course. Yes.
Which was,
as a child, that was one that I found very fascinating.
It was this guy who had a junkyard who decided to build a rocket ship to go to the moon, and he succeeded.
Yes.
And then he came back, and the very next episode, he decides to go hunt for Bigfoot.
Yes, yes. It's a strange show. Strange show. Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. But that's part of what was so cool about the 70s though. There was maybe they didn't quite get the science right all the time, but there was imagination. It feels like there was more imagination going on, and like there were kind of in that pre-Star Wars zone. There were all kinds of risks being taken and all kinds of crazy stories that they would tell, and I thought it was really cool. Man from Atlantis, and you remember that, right?
Oh
And,
God, yeah.
obviously, Logan's Run, and all this. It was just a really interesting time.
I've got a good Logan's Run TV series story. A friend of mine, Blake Edgerton, who's worked on a lot of my movies, he rang me up one day and sent me out to somewhere in the valley here in Los Angeles to buy a costume, and it was some of the original costumes from Logan's Run, like screen used costumes.
Oh wow!
And so it was a Sandman costume, and it was the green robot dude. I forget his name. He was on the TV series. Okay. So it was a Sandman TV series costume, but we had a look, and it had like Michael York's name written in there and kind of faded off. So they'd reused Michael York's costume for the TV series.
For the TV show. Yeah.
So he's got the original costumes.
Wow. That's, well, I have this, it's 3D printed.
Oh man.
But, that's my all-time favorite sci-fi gun was the Sandman pistol from Logan.
Interesting. Yeah, what I liked about those was they shot fire out the side.
They shot fire out. It was so cool. And I love the idea that there really wasn't, I mean, I guess once they got in the TV show, they made a beam come out of it. But in the movie, you just had this flame come out and then it would affect something in the distance. I thought that was so cool. It was such an interesting thing, this sort of energy weapon that was, so I'm a big fan of this design. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, very believable, realistic thing,
Mm-hmm.
For me, with Logan's Run, the only thing that let it down was the space city with the Perspex tubes,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Even as a kid, it was like, what's that?
Yeah. Okay. No, we before we started this chat, we touched on the CG versus miniatures, right? That I will say Logan's Run probably could have done with some CG as far as the city or map paintings. Paintings, maybe, like doing more map, because that miniature, as big as it screamed miniature, like super cool miniature, really, really cool miniature. But boy, you could tell that was a miniature, it was. Yeah.
And the same shot turned up in, I think, Buck Rogers from memory.
Mm-hmm. Well, they certainly had a similar, Buck Rogers. I think it was original content, but they had a similar feel to it. I remember they used like the Bonaventure Hotel in downtown Los Angeles.
Oh wow.
Yeah. If you look at Buck Rogers, there's a scene where Buck and Wilma are talking. It's right outside the Bonaventure, and then they just added like some elements that they composited in to make it seem more futuristic.
Oh my.
Yeah. So I had a big one of my big goals in life from about the age of 11 or 12 was to go and stay at the Bonaventure because of seeing it in Buck Rogers, So yeah.
Did you stay there?
Oh yeah, I've stayed there many times. So,
wow.
Yeah, there are a lot of films that have been shot at the Bonaventure actually. I think recent in terms of one was they shot Interstellar there. That was supposed to be the NASA headquarters thing that had the Saturn V, and they shot that in the Bonaventure.
See, I got to go there now. You see, I didn't know that.
Oh, you should go check it out. Yeah. Even downstairs in the Bonaventure, in their lower level, they have a sort of a display of all the different movies, like posters of all the movies that have been shot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got to go there.
Yeah. It's worth the trip. Yeah.
So, we're both sort of going down this path of we started in the world of models, and then I guess for me, I can only talk about myself. I was working with digital matte paintings in 1996 and 1997.
Okay.
I believe I did the world's first digital feature film, anamorphically, live action, blah blah blah. But I was able to use matte paintings back in '96.
Okay.
Through Photoshop versions 2 or 3 from memory. I think got to the year 2000. I started playing with 3D spaceships.
Okay.
like in the computer, which I felt was infinitely way cooler, thanks to Babylon 5 and all that stuff.
Sure.
But, I as I progressed through the years, and this is mostly my perspective. I probably had a weird path compared to other people. So it was more the low end 3D. It wasn't that bad, but it was kind of, the smaller budget stuff. And so let's see, what did I do after that? I did a movie called Humanity's End in the year 2006, which was kind of a little bit derivative of Battlestar Galactica and stuff in the style of the CG, shall we say?
Okay,
the moving camera and stuff.
One of the first show that I think really did that well was a program called Space Above and Beyond.
Exactly.
Because I don't think you would have had the effects in Galactica if you hadn't had Space Above and Beyond. They just felt like it just directly influenced it in a lot of ways. That sort of handheld camera shooting these the
jigs.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. That was what, 95, 96, but I really feel like I'd love to see a 4K upgrade of that show, boy, because that was really well done.
Yeah, it was a very definitely I didn't even realize that it is definitely a precursor to Galactica and all that.
It really is. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think of that being the one that kind of got into that sort of verisimilitude of visual effects, where space effects, where it's like it feels immediate and it's now, and like we just dumped the camera person right in the middle of the action and they're trying to capture everything, and the camera's shaky and it's moving around, and it's it's very spontaneous, and it has a really great energy to it, and I think Galactica got that, and they did well.
So that was for me. That was I guess probably influenced by both of those when I did Humanity's End. I took it to the extreme in the year 2012, where I saw other people were doing these green screen movies, and they look kind of cartoony, but they're okay. And I thought, I got to take it to the next level. I did two movies back to back called Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse, which at the time was shot on the Red camera. It was shot and finished in 4K and 5K resolution, which is a little extreme at the time. Because
I was going to say that's pretty extreme for 2020. Yeah, that's pretty ahead of your time. Yeah.
Well, especially when I don't have the budget for it. I had a budget, but most high-end TV shows weren't doing it to that level. But I'd done enough CG that I realized, okay, it's got to be 4K or 5K at least. And so we shot a lot of the stuff on in a studio on green screen. I had very good reasons. So around that time, I was having I had a stalker and I had death threats, and I had major death threats going on. So I was a little bit in hiding. So I just felt, I had a big crew. Going on location too much, it just starts to attract a lot of negativity and people, daring to do things against you, shall we say. So I kind of became a little bit closeted. I mean, there's a Discovery Channel documentary about it, so it's nothing, really worth talking about on my sense. But I decided I'd do the whole movie or most of the film on green in my own studio. So I built a giant spaceship. We shot with the spaceship elements, and then we shot on a giant green screen. And it was epic in scale and everything else. And it was actually, to be honest, a very secret homage to Blake 7.
Okay.
I say that it really wasn't Blake 7 whatsoever, except all the planet names were basically taken from Blake 7. So if you're into Blake 7, you're just every planet is a Blake 7 planet.
Blake 7.
But what I did is, I went to that extreme. Post-production was a nightmare. And we put it out, and it got some good reviews and won a lot of awards for VFX and everything. And then you look back at it many years later, and it's like, oh my God, this thing is so dated. This is such a product of the time. It doesn't stand up, And that was my lesson, I think, to the point where I started pulling away from CG a little bit, and I started using physical models again in a couple of the smaller films. And then I pretty much doing a big TV series called The Time War, which is, big production, a lot of location work, and it's been like 5 or 6 years in the making. I went back to doing physical models, and on a cost per cost basis, I had a lot of learning. I'm not a model builder, I'll be honest with you. It was cheaper. It was way cheaper, and it was better. And in the sense that there's something weird about, okay, maybe sometimes you see a few little paintbrush marks and what have you, the same as Space 1999. You can on the 4K, you can see the.
Well, yeah, the 4K was never meant to be. It's funny. You think about when Space 1999 was made; they couldn't have even anticipated any of this higher resolution stuff. And I'm sure, in talking to Brian Johnson, we were joking about that, about how it's like, oh my gosh, you can see the wires now, or you can see things. But you think about back then, it was broadcast this super low resolution.
Yeah,
it worked. It worked.
Yeah. You never would have seen it.
Never would have seen it. There's no way to see it. Yeah.
And that's been my problem, because we got to deliver masters in 4K, so we have to shoot 6K or 8K, and do all the VFX in 6K and downscale it. But I tried a couple of times to do CG, because it was just easier. And I even had these. In the Time War, I have these big giant walking Martian tripods that literally walk around, on 3 legs. The legs I couldn't animate. It was impossible. I actually tried animating a giant Martian tripod with a, group of puppeteers. It doesn't look good. It doesn't work. I'm sure it's possible, but I think it's really difficult to do. And so what I ended up doing was having these CG legs and a physical head, which I built. And I matted it on top electronically, and it looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
But for me, and I'm going to do the show and tell. Well, actually, I don't know. Can you see behind me?
I can't.
Okay, so I'll tell you what this is a thing called, this is a robot from a TV series I did. Sorry, a movie I did called Rogue Warrior Robot Fighter. It came out through Sony, and it was in Walmart and everything, and did good business, at least for Sony. But what we did was, we had this robot character. It's basically a floating robot that speaks in English.
Okay.
As it should. Okay. He was Tracy Birdsall, the actress who's working opposite him. Instead of her talking to a little tin can. Right. She was speaking. We actually put him on set, and we shot with him for real and just cut out his support bracket. But she got to look him in the eye and relate to him in the same way like Mark Hamill did with Yoda. But it brought the character to life, because somehow her acting became more real because she's looking at a physical object.
Oh, there's no question that actors, when they have something to interplay with, it's just going to be much stronger. I mean, I think for me, all you have to do is look at the Star Wars prequels to see that there was, for me, my opinion is, watching those, there's an emptiness to a lot of it, and it's because they were on these massive green screen stages, and you have a pole with a tennis ball on it, and it's like, okay, react to this. I'm telling you what that is. That's the director's saying. That's blah 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 blah. Now react to that, And you can feel, and these are good actors. They're doing the best they can, but it's not the same as actually having something present that they can interplay with. Like when I did my underwater film Oceanus, one of the things we did with that was, we obviously weren't really underwater, of course, and I had the idea was that the submarine had these is transparent aluminum windows, and they can see outside in different situations. One of the things I would do was I'd work with the actors, and I would show them previs, really detailed previs on the stage with them at the moment before we would shoot. And I would really try to get them to understand how to react to whatever was going on in the previs, and that gave them something to interplay with. So I could totally understand how, when you describe Tracy being able to interplay with something physical on the set, it just changes the whole dynamic. There's something there. Even if it's not real, you can suspend disbelief as the actor, because you have something to look into the eyes.
Yeah. Somehow that robot came to life
Mm-hmm.
for people, and they said he was our favorite character, apart from Tracy, of course. But he just became beloved, and that was my lesson. Rogue Warrior had a very similar spaceship to the Mandalorian, exactly the same shape and everything, which was a CG ship, as good as I could come up with back in that time period of 2015, 2016. Of course, the Mandalorian brought something out that was way better, but it looks like it's the same ship. It's identical, except maybe the coloring's different. But it was a lesson for me that, okay, so I just realized that maybe I should have built a physical model at that point, and built a physical spaceship, and which has forced me now, when I revisit that movie as a TV series, I'm going to replace all the CG with physical spaceship type things. It's been such a lesson for me, just in the way you resonate. See, what everyone says, this is the thing, I always test market these things. Average person will sit down, they'll watch a CG movie, and the big VFX and the glitter and everything, and think, oh, that's so cool. If it's modern, they'll say that's cool, and in 10 years I say that's horrible. But they may not always say it's as cool at the time, because it's not so glossy and shiny if it's a physical model.
Well, here's the thing. I look at some of the stuff. Obviously, you look back at some of the Anderson stuff, those old shows, and you can tell those are miniatures, right? You can tell. But there's still a charm to it.
Yeah.
There's something for me. I'm able to. How do I describe this? I don't expect it to look real. I expect it to look cool. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like when I watch like UFO or Space 1999, and I see those effects, even though they may feel like miniatures, there's still a magic to it that I don't ever get from CG. Like that, that's when I say that it's just full bore CG, especially the stuff nowadays when, like I watch, let's say, for an example, like the more the modern Star Trek movies, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. The pace of the visual effects shots is really, really, I mean, it's the pace is just, to me, it's over the top. It's so fast. Everything's moving so quickly. It becomes borderline incoherent in a way, the pacing, right? And then, yes, they might have the ability to render these spaceships with high resolution and whatever it is, but they still don't feel real. They don't feel like they have mass. They don't feel like that physics is applying to them. There's all, it's so when you have, I have people ask me questions sometimes like, why do these big budget films will have these sweeping shots, some of these Marvel films, and they'll go, why it looks expensive, but why do I not feel anything when I see that? Why does it not feel real? I'm like, well, first off, you've got a scene that looks like it's flying into a vista that's 20 miles across or something, right? And the camera looks like it would have to be moving at like 3,000 miles per hour or something. You know what I mean? It's like you're flying into a fake vista of CG created vista with a camera that couldn't exist in real space. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So when you put those two things together, we do, as human beings, we do know what real imagery looks like. We do know how it works. If you think about Jurassic Park, 30 years ago, versus some of the more modern Jurassic World movies, I personally believe the visual effects look way better in Jurassic Park. And it's simply because they felt more rooted in reality. And they also relied a lot more on the animatronics. They right? The animatronics rooted it. So then when you cut to something that's CG, your brain's not, you're suspending disbelief.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're already sold on the matter.
You're already sold. The gag has already sold you. So you can switch the gag on the audience and they still feel it. There's still continuity.
Yeah. It's very true. I mean, taking it to another level, with the Mandalorian, for example, using the volume, which is a very great piece of technology, and absolutely love it. However, we again, I went out and shot on some real locations in Scotland and in Iceland, like real locations with rain and bugs and dirt and
volcanoes.
Yeah,
volcanoes.
Real volcanoes. And there's something weird that happens when you go on location. You know,
Mhm.
that you suddenly get a flurry of bugs coming in, literally, or you do get a, super coldness coming in, or wind. Always the wind. You can't fake the wind to that level
Mhm.
sometimes, or the mist, or the fog, or the
Mhm.
rain, where you can see it's real rain going back to the
Right.
mountains.
Mhm.
And that's been, for me, that's been the best thing is taking that great technology, the
Mhm.
great cameras and the great lenses, and sticking it in the rain, or sticking
Yeah,
it in the
could not agree more. Could not agree
yeah.
more. Yeah.
It
No,
That's
and
been my
I think,
yeah.
well, I think the LED volume is a cool bit of technology, and we've even used it ourselves. And it's a technology I'll continue to use in the future on my features and things like that. But I don't want to rely on it.
Mm.
And I think that there's sometimes some of these shows, there's an over reliance on it, and it starts to develop a look, because there's limitations to what you can do with it. So you have to develop and formulate your shots around the limitations of the technology. Well, if you're doing entire episodes of a TV show and you're using it, it all just starts to feel the same. It starts to look the same, and there's to me that it begins to start to lose the realism in a way, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you use it sparingly and in the right places,
Hmm.
it can be an amazing enhancement. But you still have to get out in the field. You still have to shoot on location. You still have to shoot with real
Yeah.
physical sets and all those things. Otherwise, it just doesn't. I don't know. Yeah,
The actors need it.
honestly, I think it's part. I think audiences. I don't know that the audiences are savvy enough always to understand what it is that they're objecting to,
Mhm.
right? I don't know that they can just say I don't like that because they don't understand the technical aspects of it. But I think it connects to what you're talking about. There's a feeling,
Mm.
and if that feeling is off, you start to lose interest. And I
Yeah.
think part of what's happening with a lot of this, a lot of the Disney contract, the Marvel, the Star Wars, those things. It's like people are starting to kind of grumble about these things because there's so much of it,
Hmm.
and it all has the same approach and technology and thing, right? So then it just loses what was magical. It loses what was special. One of the reasons why I got into filmmaking was because, I think about that time period between sort of 77 and say 83.
Hmm.
There was so much. It was awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
Literally, your jaw would drop when you'd see things. It would. And hey, are you a fan at all of The Right Stuff, the movie The Right Stuff?
Oh, I love that film. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen it probably 50 times.
yeah, it's a phenomenal film, and but a big part of what makes that film work so well is because of the realism of how they did it, and even the work they did with the miniatures in there.
Mm.
It was such a lo-fi approach to it, like these models on wires and all these, shot with these right? I mean, it
Yeah.
was, yeah, it just made it feel so much more rooted in
Yeah.
reality, so when you cross-cut those effect shots with the real footage they were getting, you believe it,
Yeah. He
Yeah.
really is in a cockpit being
It
shaken
really, right,
around.
exactly. So it's, whereas if you did that now and then you just all of a sudden cut to, you've got this set and it looks so real, and you cut to a CG plane doing something, it doesn't have the heart. That's
Yeah.
my point to it. It loses heart. Yeah, yeah.
So on with what you're doing, uh, I've noticed you've got the physical models of the eagle,
Mhm.
and you're also doing some CG. What's
Yeah,
your
I mean,
VFX approach?
what we're gonna do. My goal, Brian Johnson and I were talking a lot about the idea that there were things that they wanted to do back 50 years ago when they did Space 1999. It just technologically it wasn't possible, and there were limitations in what they could fit inside the miniatures, what the miniatures could view operationally. Say things like, imagine the landing gear going up and down
Yeah.
on the Eagle, right? Or maybe having different types of lights involved in it physically, all those different things that they would have, they couldn't do 180-degree shots,
Yeah.
right? Those sorts of things. They couldn't. You have all these thrusters and things on the spacecraft, but you couldn't show those thrusters fire or have the ship move as though the thrusters are affecting it, right?
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. So the idea of saying let's do a mix of miniatures and use the miniatures where they're best involved, but then use CG to fill in the blanks in places where it extends the reach of the effects in a way. But you use CG as an enhancement, not as a crutch. That's how I look at it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what's going to be? Are you able to give away the secrets at the moment of how you're going to approach showing the eagle in the documentary?
I'm still right now. I'm still in talks with ITV a little bit about how it's all going to work and how it's all going to play out. What I can tell you is that my intention is to the documentary's kind of got 5 parts to it in a way, and it's really a personal journey that follows me. I go back and talk about childhood and being influenced by things like 2001: A Space Odyssey and the space program, and then along comes this show called Space 1999. I watch this show. I see this ship called an Eagle. I become obsessed with it. Over the years, I meet all these other people from all around the world. They're all obsessed with it. We collect them. People build them. There's a gentleman in Denmark who just built a quarter scale one in his backyard. It's beautifully built. Wonderful. At some point, someone's going to build a full size one. It's just inevitable. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, it's been 50 years. Why do people keep talking about this? What's this about? So my thought is that the general thesis of the film is that the eagle represents the future we lost. The future, I think, so many young people thought that we're going to grow up to be a part of, to experience, and to be really a vital portion of, right? The idea that, hey, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to go up into space, or I'm going to be a scientist, or I'm going to be a researcher, or I'm going to be an adventurer. I'm going to be part of that. And there's something was lost. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And I think, nothing against the space shuttle, nothing against the things that happened during that time, but it's nothing compared to the grandiose visions that, if you look at NASA art, that was projections or some of the space art that showed what people saw the coming decades as being. If you're a little kid and you read that and you see that, you think the future looks pretty bright.
Yeah.
Future looks pretty bright.
Yeah.
And my idea is that we lost that future, and for a lot of us, subconsciously, the eagle became a way that we were holding on to that dream. That's what I think it is. So we're going to explore that, and I'm going to talk to Brian Johnson about how the eagle how he came up with it and how they actually did the visual effects. I'm going to talk with him and some members of his effects team. I'm going to talk to people who were influenced. Bill George, visual effects supervisor from ILM. We're going to talk about how Space 1999 and the Eagle affected the visual effects industry and even Star Wars, and everything. So he and I are going to visit with him in San Francisco. I mean, there's a lot of cool things. We're going to go all around the world with this, and we're going to talk to all kinds of people who were either influenced by this or impacted by it and that sort of thing. And it should be a really, really interesting documentary. I'm even going to talk with some scientists and artists who were from back in that time who were projecting the future. And I want to find out from them, how did it feel? One of the astronauts who walked on the moon, Charles Duke, is going to be part of this thing.
Wow.
Yeah, which is great. So I'm going to be actually hanging out with him at the Kennedy Space Center as part of this, and talking with him about what was it like to be on the moon, and what did he think the future was going to be like, and where does he see it now, and that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, I'm going to have a feature-length documentary that's really going to explore. It's not a Space 1999 documentary by any means. It's really about this unique time in history, and how the love of the eagle epitomized that time in history's influence on young people. That's what it's about. So I'm hoping to include a lot of original effects of the eagle throughout the documentary to sort of illustrate different ideas and different thoughts. And the goal would be for us to do a combination of some miniature work that I do with Brian. We're planning to do some work at Pinewood Studios in London, and we would do some miniature.
Could I come?
We'd certainly talk about it. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we could make something work. And
wow.
Yeah, and so we're going to do that, but then we're also going to do some CG work as well that will enhance that. But it'll be CG work that Brian and I sort of design and figure out how to intermix with the miniature work we do. Yeah. And so I want to kind of show, like, if they'd had access to digital technology back then and weren't relying on it, what would they have done with Space 1999? 50 years ago with today's tech mixing it. So that's how I see it. It's not about, hey, let's just go and recreate the eagle. Like, I mean, even some of the shots you've seen, I've let you see some of the shots we've already done. I tried to hold back and make sure that this felt like something that was more of an homage, and that was in a much more classical pacing and timing and look and feel, as opposed to trying to, like I look at some of the new visual effects work they're doing on some of the like taking the Enterprise and the way they fly the Enterprise in this show Strange New Worlds. It looks like a fighter jet. The way that, it's like, you don't feel like that thing is however many meters long, and it's got this mass to it and all this stuff. It feels like it's flying around like a fighter, and it's just
it defies the laws of physics.
It defies physics. It doesn't, and it also doesn't feel connected in any way to what we've seen the Enterprise look like and do for decades, right? So to me, I don't want to sit here and go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could take the Eagle and make it fly like an X-wing, or make it fly like I want to go and say, hey, the Eagle was awesome the way it was. How can we just take that and make it even more awesome? That's the approach that I see. So yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
So here's my big question. I've never done a Kickstarter myself. I've been very scared of them. I was once involved in a Kickstarter campaign as one of the spokespeople, and thankfully that person, did follow through and finished the campaign, and took him longer than expected. He did deliver the finished goods, but I pulled out of it because of it wasn't the way I would run a film production, shall we say. But thankfully that person did follow through, and I got to give him respect for that, because few people, we know there's a lot of people who don't follow through with Kickstarter. And I'm obviously, I'm not putting my name to this, but I get the feel. I mean, I know you're already on the road to doing this. To people who don't know you, what's and we only know each other in a small way, but what's the guarantee, or what
Oh, well, it's several things. I mean, number one, we're already in production on this. We I've been lucky to have a group of partners and investors who've worked with me for a number of years to really develop and create my projects, and we're really trying to build my company. Future Dude Entertainment is really about trying to reinvigorate sci-fi and create this sort of pre-Star Wars sci-fi using today's tech, if that makes sense, right? And telling these deeper stories and that sort of thing. And they believe in me, and I have a group of people who have been following my work over the years who believe in me. So what's happened is I have a relationship with a company called 0.0. They're out of New York. They did shows like Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain, where he, the chef who dropped, right? That's one of their. They've been nominated for. They've won dozens of Emmys. They've been nominated for, I think, 96 Emmys or something like that over the years. They're the top end of production in this area. They're our partner on this, and partner in the, as far as just distributing the project when it's finished and everything like that. So it's guaranteed to find a home, and and it's probably going to be in one of the high-end streamers, probably like somewhere like an Amazon or Netflix, maybe even Apple. And that's something that's for sure. My investors and I have already put together a plan. We've actually shot 2 segments of the film already. So we shot part of it at Wonderfest, which is a big model building convention that happens in Louisville, Kentucky every year. And there's a big, huge display there they did about the Eagle. And so we interviewed the guys who put that together and people who were model builders of the Eagle and everything, which was really fun. I went to Calgary, where there was a big Space 1999 convention, and that's where I got to meet Nick Tate and got to get to know him and got his involvement in the project. We also shot in Colorado with author Kevin J. Anderson, he's written tons of Dune books and Star Wars, X-Files, those sorts of things. Kevin's a huge Space 1999 guy, and he and I talked a lot about this lost future, and we interviewed him, which was great. And then, so we're already in production. It's not like I'm waiting to do the Kickstarter to then do the production. We've already been moving on it. I've been actually working on this project for almost a year. Wow. So I think I first thought of it last fall, and I was like, man, like, why do people like the Eagle? I should make a movie about that, and it just kind of exploded from there.
So the train's rolling.
The train's rolling. Yeah, this thing is not the Kickstarter is a way to enable us to be sure we finish it. That's the idea. But we're way down. We've got a super Anne-Marie Gillen, who's a producer I'm working with, seasoned producer. She's been around for decades. She used to run Morgan Freeman's company, Revelations Entertainment. She legendary producer. She worked on this movie called. She actually created this film called Fried Green Tomatoes back in the 90s. That's very popular. That was her project. So Anne Marie's been around for a long time in this stuff, and she knows what she's doing. She's my producing partner on the project, and so we've got a great team, and we've been at it for a while. We're super well organized. We have a plan. I have a great machine of people, both in the PR and production realm. So we're going to get it done. There's no question about it. My target is to have this thing completely finished and in the can by next summer. So that's the thing. So
wow,
yeah,
2024.
Yes. And we have the 50th anniversary of Space 1999 is 2025. So I'm hoping that this will make its debut for that, which will be fun. Yeah.
So, man, that's exciting.
Yeah. So
wow.
So I'm not to. I don't think anyone has anything to worry about whether or not we're going to complete this thing. We absolutely are going to complete it, and we also have some stretch goals that we're planning. And once I negotiate everything with ITV, my hope is that we can do some things like I've got a team at Pinewood who could rebuild the Eagle, the interior of it.
Goodness.
We've already designed it all. We've already done it virtually. So it's just a matter of just bringing it to life. And these guys worked on Andor, and all kinds of Star Wars movies and Marvel TV stuff and movies. And they're good friends of mine. They're working on my film Persephone. So they're willing to rebuild the Eagle interior. And so there's a VR tour we can do of the exterior of the Eagle. There's stuff like that. There's all kinds of stuff we have planned. So I'm just hoping what I can do is sort of finalize my relationship with ITV so that I have the rights to do this stuff with the Eagle and everything. But as far as the documentary is concerned, I don't have to have, a documentary is a documentary, right? Like, But I'm hoping that there's something more. I think there are millions of fans of this around the world. And in a lot of ways, as far as the model building and the interest around the actual physical miniature, there's more now than there's ever been. It's going up, not down. The interest is going up.
Yeah,
really interesting. So yeah.
It's funny how it's almost eclipsed the show itself.
It has no question about it. And I also should mention that we have Barbara Bain, who is the co-star of the show. She's going to be in the documentary as well. And I actually want to specifically talk to her about what it was like to work in those futuristic sets of Space 1999 and the costumes, the sets, the technology. And there was even an episode where she they I don't know if you remember the episode. It's called The Last Sunset, where they were the moon had the atmosphere and everything, and then she ended up blowing an Eagle up in order to get the attention of and everything. So I want to talk to her specifically about working in that set and being around all that and everything. So it should be fun.
That was the episode where it rained on the moon for a day.
Yes, where it rained. And Victor goes, what was it? Was it John? No, I think opens the window. Just opened the window.
Yeah, that confused me because it's like, why would you on a moon base have a window?
Would you possibly have a window that could do that on a moon base? I don't know, but I don't know. It's really
just in case.
Yeah, I guess just in case we happen to have an atmosphere, and we want to let the air in, we should have those be able to open. That show, it's funny because I have a real love of the Eagle, and it's interesting because in my journey with this, I've discovered there are a whole bunch of fans in the world who actually like the Eagle more than they like the show. So
I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
No, I do like the show. I've been rewatching it recently again for the 50 millionth time.
Well, there's certainly episodes, especially first season, that I think are just fantastic. Like Dragon's Domain and War Games.
My favorite.
Yeah, Dragon's Domain is fantastic. And I mean, scared the absolute hell out of me as a child. But
me too.
Yeah. It's like it's one of those things. It's like it seems like two things people remember about that show is the Eagle and Dragon's Domain. Remember that episode with that monster is like a car wash. It's like that's what we called it.
I actually ripped that off. I did a movie called Alien Dawn, which was basically it was meant to be War of the Worlds. low budget version, and they wouldn't let me call it that because they're afraid of lawsuits. But there's a scene where you've got the Martian creature actually with the tentacles eating somebody up, but a lot slower, and lots of blood involved and everything. And I mean, it literally was a direct rip-off of that episode.
Well,
Even had the single eye as well.
even had the single eye, yeah. You got to take the machete to the eye,
Yeah.
yeah. So, or the hatchet,
Nice.
yeah. No, I certainly have a fondness for it, and it was a unique time, and it was a unique vision, and I don't think we've ever had anything quite like it since. And I've even pitched ITV a couple of times on a reboot of it and everything. It's just such a weird, you had a show called Space 1999, right? It's a very hard one to they kind of stuck themselves there in terms of the idea of anything for, right? It's like 1999. What does that mean? And my reboots involve some time travel to alternate realities and that sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they got pretty close, actually. The second one especially got very close. I have one more potential pitch for how we'd reboot it, but they were very clear with me about kind of where they stood, that they're not going to make a Space 2099. They're not as concerned. So many writers they say are coming to them going, let's remake this, but then everyone's focused on, here's how the moon could get blasted out of orbit. And they're like, ITV's like, that's not what we're concerned about. We want to know how you're going to treat the characters, or what's the story, and and everyone's so stuck in this moon blasted out of orbit thing, and so what I may end up doing is I've been parallel tracking, developing a concept for a TV miniseries around us set on the moon in the, a couple decades from now and everything. And I think you could do a really cool moon base story that has elements of things like Space 1999, but it's an original story. Yeah. Because I still think that moon thing is just it's territory that just hasn't been explored enough yet.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
We all want to go there.
Yeah.
We only got a couple of minutes left.
Sure.
So just in closing, what do you want to say to the world?
Yeah. Well, I mean, several things. I hope people will have a willingness to support us and help us get this thing done. I mean, it's not just about the Eagle or Space 1999. It's also, we've hit some interesting, people like yourself who followed my career, and they're like, man, this stuff is really good. Why is it you can't get this over the top or turn it into big movies? Well, and how hard it is. It's a very, very difficult industry. And I've had some real reticence in terms of the sort of hard sci-fi realistic approach to what I want to do. It's not something that I can easily sell in Hollywood. It's not been an easy sell. And I want to go do this stuff independently. So if, people who are fans of my work, who want to see this stuff advance and continue, by supporting this project, you're going to help us to kickstart everything. It's not just this documentary. It's all the stuff we're trying to do, and I think that would be a tremendous help to us. And, we're targeting September 13th for our launch date for the Kickstarter, which is Breakaway Day in the Space 1999 lore,
No.
Yeah.
That's genius.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. And, it'll run for 30 days into October. And we really hope that we can get enough support to get the thing off the ground, get her done. I think it's a fantastic project. We have an amazing slate of people to be, that we're interviewing. They're going to be part of it. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a very surprising journey. And I think that even if you've never heard of Space 1999, don't know anything about this, it's good. It's just an interesting look at a window into an aspect of our culture that a lot of people just don't know about. And I think it's going to be really fascinating. So that's my spiel.
Man, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, hey, it's been really wonderful to get to know you more too, and everything. I've obviously followed your work and everything over the years, and I think I've always been impressed with your, I'm like, whoa, he's on another volcano. It's like I see you're in social media and the kind of things and places you go. You're a renegade. You take risks. You get out there. You do things. You get them done, and I think it's really impressive. And so I think we're kindred spirits, and I really appreciate you having an interest in what I'm trying to do, and
oh, absolutely,
it's out there.
I just realized one day, I said, this guy's a true brother. This is the guy. This is the guy I should have grown up with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, feelings mutual. So very appreciated.
Hi there. This is Nick Tate. I'm super excited to be part of the new documentary, The Eagle Has Landed. An exclusive look starts now.
50 years ago, an icon was born. The Eagle transporter is one of the greatest sci-fi spacecraft ever conceived. To this day, the design provokes an intense devotion among countless fans around the world. The question is, why? I'm writer-director Jeffrey Morris. I've been enamored with the Eagle since I first saw it in the TV series Space 1999 back in 1975. As a child who followed the Apollo program, the Eagle felt like a direct descendant of NASA's lunar module. Those transformative moon missions left an indelible impact on a generation, as did the Eagle in Space 1999. Over the years, I've discovered that I'm just one of millions of fans who has an affection for the Eagle and a nostalgia for a future we never achieved. So I'm shooting a feature documentary about the origins of this beloved ship, while also exploring its ongoing cultural impact. And I'm inviting you to join me. I'll be speaking with the Eagle's designer, visual effects wizard Brian Johnson. I'll also chat with Nick Tate, the actor who played legendary pilot Captain Alan Carter. It's going to be an epic journey as I travel around the globe to speak with Eagle aficionados and luminaries from the worlds of science and science fiction. As for myself, the visionary world building in Space 1999 blew my mind. It ultimately inspired me to become a filmmaker and production designer. I'm the creator of hard sci-fi projects such as the forthcoming deep space adventure Persephone, the apocalyptic underwater thriller Oceanus, and the universe-hopping techno-fantasy Parallel Man. Now I'm bringing all of my experience and passion to the creation of this documentary. The good news is we've already begun production. We self-financed a shoot in Louisville, Kentucky at Wonderfest, where I spoke with lifelong Eagle fans from around the country. They shared passionate stories about the iconic vessel and the aspects that make it so memorable. Then I traveled to Colorado, where I interviewed Kevin J. Anderson, the best-selling author of books set in the Dune, Star Wars, and X-Files universes. He also happens to be a huge fan of Space 1999. Recently, Kevin and I co-authored the novelization of my film Persephone. We had a blast discussing our mutual love of the Eagle and what it represents. Yet, there's still plenty left to do. I have to hire production crews at locations around the world. I also need to create visual effects and music. And of course, it all has to be edited together at a level that will rival any award-winning documentary. Now I'm asking for your assistance in completing the voyage. Check out our Kickstarter. There are tons of great rewards and even a couple of awesome stretch goals. A future began 50 years ago, and its time is now. Become a supporter of The Eagle Has Landed.